Good evening, Viruchim Abbaim Rabotai. Welcome to another edition of our Thursday night's class. Tonight's class is sponsored for the Atzlacha and Refuah of a dear friend of mine, Rabbi David Guy ben Bacha Galit. Hashem שתסיים לרפואה שלמה בקרוב, שמירה מעולה, ברכה, הצלחה, נחת, קדושה, שמחה אמיתית, מכל יוצאי חלציו, אמן ואמן. Tonight we're going to talk about a pasuk that there's so much to learn from, or psukim that there's so much to learn from. The Torah says a story after Moshe Rabbeinu gathered the Shivim Skenim. There were two that stayed behind. So it's Perek Yud Aleph, Pasuk Chav Zayin, I think. Chavav it starts. Vayisharu shnei anashim b'machaneh. Two men remained behind in the camp. Shema echad Eldad v'shema sheni Meidad. One his name was Eldad, the other one was Meidad. ותנח עליהם הרוח והימה בכתובים ולא יצאו האוהלה והתנבאו במחנה. So they didn't leave the tent, right? And they had a prophet, a spirit rested on them. And while they were in the tent, meaning the Davar Kadosh, which was a nevuah. Vayarotz anar, and the youth ran. The youth was Yoshua. Vayagid leMoshe, and he told Moshe Rabbeinu, Vayamru Eldad Meidad mitnabim b'machaneh. Eldad Meidad are saying nevuah in the machaneh. Vayan Yoshua bin Nun. Yoshua bin Nun said, Misharet Moshe mibachura vayomer Adoni Moshe klaim. My master Moshe, you should incarcerate them. Why? Because disrespectful that they're saying nevuah in front of Moshe Rabbeinu. So what did Moshe Rabbeinu answer? Vayomer lo Moshe, hamkaneh ata li. So Moshe answered him, are you being zealous for my sake? And he continued, Mi iten kolam Hashem neviim ki iten Hashem et rucho aleihem. And what would the entire people of Hashem could be prophets if Hashem would place His Spirit upon them? Meaning Moshe Rabbeinu not only wasn't bothered by the fact that they had nevuah and they were saying nevuah, he was actually happy about it. And he said he doesn't understand why they're saying to incarcerate them. It's a happy thing that's going on. So, on this, the Gemara Masachet Sanhedrin Daf Yud Zayin Amud Aleph says, B'sha'ah she'amar lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu Moshe. At the time that HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Moshe Rabbeinu, Esfali Shivim Ish, that he should gather for him 70 people. Amru Eldad Meidad, they said, Ein anu ro'im lo oto gdula. Eldad Meidad said, we're not worthy for such greatness. Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, Ho'il umiatem atzmechem, because you made yourself smaller, meaning you weren't arrogant, you didn't show off. Just the opposite, you said you're not worthy. Hareini mosif gdula al gdulatchem. I will add more greatness to the greatness that you already have. And what's the gdula that he added on? That the Nevi'im, all their prophecy stopped at one point, and his prophecy, and their prophecy, Eldad Meidad's prophecy, lo pasku, it continued. So the Gemara asked, Uma nevuah nitnabu, what's the prophecy that they had when it continued? So the Gemara answers, they said, Moshe Rabbeinu will die, and Yoshua machnis et Yisrael Haaretz. And Yeshua is going to bring the Jewish nation into Israel, which is exactly what happened. Now Moshe Rabbeinu won't merit to bring the Jews into Israel. Yeshua will take them over. So on this nevuah is what the Nar went to Moshe and said, Eldad Meidad mitabim b'machaneh. He went and told him, Moshe Rabbeinu, they're saying that you're going to die, and that somebody else is going to take us, the Jewish nation, into Israel. And Yeshua said on that, Adoni Moshe Klaim. He said, Moshe, incarcerate them. They can't talk that way. So the Brisker has a very, very tough question over here. And this question he asked Reb Chaim Brisker, his father. He said, if their prophecy was a false prophecy, so then what does it mean, incarcerate them? The halakha is, if somebody says in Nivwat Sheker, so he's chayav mitah. They deserve the death penalty. And if the prophecy was a real prophecy and they were saying the truth of the prophecy they had, so then they have to say the prophecy. Because the Torah teaches us that if somebody gets a true prophecy, a nevuah, an avi that's kovesh nevuato, that doesn't reveal his prophecy and he hides it for himself, he is over in a lav. It's a sin. He's obligated to, that's why Hashem gives a person prophecy, to spread it, or gave. Today there is no prophecy. Right? The Gemara says, Miyom Shenecha Beit HaMikdash, from the day the temple was destroyed, the Nevuah prophecy was given, Lashotim Belatinokot, the people that aren't mentally well, and to children. So if today somebody thinks that he's a prophet, or he knows the future, or predicts the future, then you know right away, he's either a shoteh or a tinok. But anyway, Reb Chaim Brisker answered his son like this. He said, Yoshua knew that they accepted the Nevuah, and they knew that it was a true Nevuah, and they have to say it as a result. So what was their quote-unquote sin? What were they doing wrong that Yoshua was upset about? Because for the honor of Moshe Rabbeinu, they should have said the Nevuah in the Oil Moed, not in the Machaneh. Since they said it in the Machaneh, and it became more of a public subject, that could have been prevented because it was a Nevuah about Moshe dying. And for that, for the way they said it, not for actually saying it, but for the way they said it, there was a mi'ut, there was a lessening in the kavod, in the honor of Moshe Rabbeinu, and it wasn't the right place to say it. And on that, Yoshua said, claim. Moshe Rabbeinu said on that, Hamkaneh Atali, meaning, if the whole problem here is nothing to do with the halakha of saying prophecies, the problem is my honor, so I'm mochel on my honor. And I'm mochel on my kavod. And therefore it's not a problem and everything's fine. That's Reb Chaim Brisker's pshat that he told the Briskerov the way to explain this. There's an interesting continuation to this way of thinking from Reb Chaim of Volozhiner, Zechat Tzaddik Kol V'chas Chutei Yagen Aleinu Amen. He says an unbelievable chidush. There's a midrash that says that Eldad and Medad were greater than the Shivim Skenim and the 70 Skenim with 5 things. One of the 5 things was that the Shivim Skenim got prophecy through Moshe Rabbeinu. But, you know, the Pasuk says, the midrash quotes a Pasuk, V'atzalti min haruach asher alecha v'samti alehem. I'll take from the spirit that's on you and I'll give it to them, to the 70. But Eldad and Medad, they got direct prophecy from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, like it says, V'tanach alehem haruach. The spirit, meaning Hashem, rested directly on them. This is what it says in the midrash. Yoshua had a problem with that. He said, if they're more than the Shivim Skenim, and the only other person that ever got a direct nebuah from Hashem was Moshe Rabbeinu, so now we have an issue. What's the issue? That they're kavyachol, to a certain extent, on the same level of prophecy as Moshe Rabbeinu. And therefore, he went to Moshe that should be stopped, and Moshe should be the only leader, because Ein Shnei Melachim Mishtamshim Beketer Echad. 2 kings can't use 1 crown, that's the famous saying. Moshe Rabbeinu said, Hamkaneh Atali, don't stick up for my kavod, it's fine. I'm more than happy to see that other people also have the same level of prophecy as me. Which, by the way, is not precise, because the Torah says clearly that Moshe Rabbeinu was the only one had the greatest level of prophecy, but what it seemed at the moment in the eyes of Yeshua. Comes from Chaim Volozhin and says, there's a Gemara, Masechet Chulin Daf, I think Samach Amud Bet, that the Gemara says, every child knows this story, but they don't know it's a Gemara. That at the beginning, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world, he created 2, we'll call it me'orot, sources of light, the sun and the moon. And the moon came to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and said that it can't be that there should be 2 leaders, meaning 2 sources of energy and light to the world that are the same size. There got to be 1 leader and not the other. And from there we learn this idea, this saying, Ein Shnei Melachim Mishtamshim Beketer Echad. So then Hashem told the Gemara says Hashem told the moon, if that's the case, so you be the small one, the sun will be the big one, and you have no light on its own, the sun gets its light from the moon, right? Up to here, everybody knows. Comes from Chaim Volozhin and says something that's genius. Everything he said was genius, but this is just another piece of genius. There's another Gemara in Masechet Gitin, Daf Lamed Vav Amud Bet, also a very famous Gemara. Halavai, the incidents shouldn't happen, but if they do, we should live up to the standards of the Gemara. The Gemara says, Hane'elavim ve'inam olvim. If somebody was insulted, for example, and he didn't insult back, somebody said something not nice to you, and you didn't fire back. Shomim chelpatam ve'inam meshivim. They hear their shame, people shaming them, and they don't respond. Alehem ha'katuv omer, and then the Pasuk says, Ve'ohavav kitzeit hashemesh bigmurato. Hashem says, the Pasuk says, those are the people that I love. Like what? Like the sun when it comes out, when it shines in its power, in the most strong angle towards the world. So who is that? Somebody who's shomim et chelpatam, ve'inam shivim, or alvim ve'inam alvim. So they get to what? The Gemara says, we just quoted, Giti Lamed Zav Bet, to the level of shemesh b'gvurato. Remember that. Comes from Chaim Velazhin and says, based on this, we could say, explain a third Gemara. There's another Gemara that's in Maseret Bava Batra Daf, probably Ayin Hey Amud Aleph. And over there the Gemara says, Pnei Moshe kipnei chama. The face of Moshe Rabbeinu was like the face of the sun. Pnei Yoshua, the face of Yoshua, kipnei levana, was like the face of the moon. Based on this, Chaim Velazhin says, listen to this is amazing. We got to dance and sing from this shot. It's an unbelievable shot. He says, what does it mean that Moshe was like the sun and Yeshua was like the moon? He says, why is Yeshua like the moon? Because Yeshua was the one who came to Moshe Rabbeinu and said, of course he was sticking up for Moshe Rabbeinu's honor, but at the end of the day, he was the one who said that two mlachim can't be mishtamesh b'keter echad, meaning Eldad Amidad, that's the same nivuah as you, that can't work. Adoni Moshe Kleim. Moshe Rabbeinu was mochel al kvodo. That was what he answered Yeshua. And therefore he was in the criteria of Alavim ve'inam olvim. So ein shnei mlachim mishtamshim b'keter echad was the case of the moon historically, as we quoted from the Gemara in Chulin Daf Samach Avlet. So that's why the Gemara says in Bava Batra Hey that Pnei Yoshua kipnei levana, because he went with the way of the moon. Moshe Rabbeinu that heard it and said that he forgives on his honor, so he fits the criteria of the Gemara Giti Lamed Vav that says V'avav kiseit Hashemesh b'gvurato. So therefore the Gemara Bava Batra says Pnei Moshe, the face of Moshe Rabbeinu, is kipnei chama, is like the face of the sun. Mamash genius. I'm telling you, we should sing, dance, and make a Simchat Torah celebration just for this pshat. Literally just for this pshat. Unbelievable. Gan Eden. You just got paradise in this world. Amazing. Now let's continue. From all of this, we learn an unbelievable thing. The inyan of how careful we have to be for the kvod HaTorah, for the honor of the Torah, primarily for the honor of Talmidei Chachamim. So I want to share with you, with a little bit of Mesilut Nefesh, because of physical restraints. This Sunday, I attended an event. I think it was called the Adirei Torah event. It was in the Wells Fargo Center in Philadelphia. Some tzaddikim that didn't mention their names there, so I guess they want to keep it, even though everybody knows who they are, but I guess they still don't want to turn this into a publicity stunt thing. So I'm not going to mention their names, but they're really tzaddikim. Went and took a huge stadium. I don't know the exact number of seats, so I don't want to make up, but to me it looked like 15,000, 20,000 for sure, if not more people. And took it out and made a gathering that they called Ma'amad Adirei Torah. A gathering that the sole purpose was to show honor and respect for the warriors of Torah, meaning for our close to 8,000 college students in the biggest yeshiva in the world, Yeshivat Beit Midrash Kavod, the Lakewood Yeshiva. Hashem should watch over them. These tzaddikim that hold up the whole world. I'm not their spokesman. I'm just going to give you my perspective on it. My perspective on it, and what I experienced there was an unbelievable thing. We got to a point, lo aleinu v'lachem, it's embarrassing to talk about even, that people disrespect college people. They feel like they're a burden on society. We're always having to raise money for them. They don't have their own money. They're not self-sufficient. We lost the great honor and kavod for Talmidei Chachamim, for these college students. We even got to that point that so many girls won't date a guy that wants to sit and learn. He's a learning boy. No, I don't want to learn. I don't want to date him. Idiot. He's a Talmid Chacham. This is the only person you should want to date. Why are you even thinking of dating somebody else, if anything? And no, I'm not getting into the discussion of what's right for each individual. This is a very personalized thing. But it's the concept. So we lost it. It used to be the opposite extreme. Talmidei Chachamim, college students were the most sacred thing in the world. Everybody understood that they're bigger and better than us. And if we work and they learn, then they're the good ones, and we have to show them respect no matter what. But a little bit, today our celebrities became different people. So these tzaddikim took out a stadium and brought thousands of college students and brought thousands of Baalei Batim that have a commitment to supporting these college students and put them all together together with a few amazing speeches and a siyum hashas and some music, and it was mamash ma'amad lichvoda shel Torah. It was such an uplifting experience, very beautiful thing, very amazing thing. So the timing of it, together with the chidushim the way he said and are going to say, is really amazing, because it inspired me to talk about this subject. How careful we have to be with the honor of Torah. There's a Midrash Tanchuma in Tetzaveh, Siman Tet. The Midrash Tanchuma says something frightening, that we see that Moshe Rabbeinu lived till 120, the full amount of years that a person lives. Yoshua didn't live until 120. He passed away at 110. So the Midrash asks, why did he lose 10 years of his life? Why didn't he live like Moshe, 10 years? So it says in the Midrash, because he said, Adoni Moshe Klaim, because he gave his rabbi advice. He went to tell his rabbi what to do. Instead of just sitting quietly and letting the rabbi decide on his own, he thought he had an opinion. So the Midrash Tanchuma says in Tzaveh, from here you learn that a Talmid, the student, is not allowed to say something lifnei rabo. Why? Because hamoreh davar lifnei rabo shnotav mitkatzrot. If somebody says something in front of his Rebbe, his years will be shortened by minah. Now let's put things in perspective. What did he say in front of his Rebbe? He was sticking up for his Rebbe's covet. Right? Not only that, what was the Nevuah? The Nevuah was that his Rebbe is going to die and he's going to be the new leader of Am Yisrael. What's the natural, normal instinct that a person has when somebody tells him you're becoming the president? Not that that's a great honor. And in Israel, for sure, it's not a great honor to be the prime minister. It's maybe the biggest embarrassment existing in the world. But in theory, a king, like the Gemara says, a king is considered an honor, not a dictator, a true king. So imagine somebody just got a notification he's becoming David HaMelech, the king of Klal Yisrael. He should start dancing and singing. What was Yoshua busy with when he just found out through a prophecy that he's going to be the leader of Klal Yisrael, is going to bring them into Eretz Yisrael? The honor of his Rebbe, Moshe Rabbeinu. Adoni Moshe claimed that it's not respectful to say such a nevuah, definitely not in front of Moshe Rabbeinu, near where Moshe Rabbeinu is. So look how great this is. He was at a moment that he should have been in a celebration mode. He just found out he's going to be the person to bring Am Yisrael into Eretz Yisrael. And instead of being in that moment in celebration mode, he was busy with sticking up for the kavod for Moshe. Af al pikein. Anyway, despite this greatness, the fact that he was moreh halacha b'fnei, it wasn't halacha, the fact that he said davar, a thing, that's lashon of the midrash, in front of Rabbo, he lost 10 years of his life. 10 years of his life. And this is the student that the Torah testifies was the most loyal, devoted student in history. Doesn't get more devoted and loyal than that. The Torah says that Hashem himself testifies on it. And Afal Pikein, because in the dark of the dark, in the thinnest of the thinnest, there was a lack in Moshe Rabbeinu's respect. That was enough of a justification by Menan that he should lose 10 years of his life. If this is correct, not if this is correct, we got to learn a piece in Rabbeinu Yonah and take it to heart and really change our ways tonight still. Rabbeinu Yonah in Sha'arei Tshuva and Sha'ar Gimel Ot Kuf Nun Hey, you should look it up inside. Writes, and I quote, Inyan ha'apikoros, the inyan of somebody who's an apikoros, ba'menan, apikoros, what's an apikoros? Pirshubo, Raboteinu Zichronav Livracha, or Rabbi say, Gemara Sanhedrin Daf Tzadik Tet Amud Bet, כי הוא איש אשר איננו נוהג בדרך מורא והדר בתלמידי חכמים. That is a person that doesn't behave in a way of respect and fear from תלמידי חכמים. אף על פי שאינו מבזה אותם. Even if he didn't embarrass them, God forbid. He didn't talk negative about a תלמיד חכם. But, כגון, שהוא מבזה את חברו בפני תלמיד חכם. He said something not nice to his friend, but it was near a תלמיד חכם. And that's not a way to behave, period, but definitely not in front of a Talmid Chacham. V'lo sam kavod l'torat hachacham, and he didn't give honor to the Torah that the Chacham knows. Ki achrei she'ein haTorah hadura be'einav, because the Torah is not great enough in his eyes. That's a rough translation. Linhog b'derech kavod, to behave in a respectful, honorable way. Ein lo chelek la'olam haba. he doesn't have a chilek in olam haba. Ki gam zeh b'mechalei haTorah yechashev. That's also considered somebody who desecrates the Torah. The truth is, the Gemara over there in Sanhedrin Daf, right after Kuf Amud Aleph, says, Heichidami apikores. What's an apikores? K'gon da'amar hinheu rabanan. Rashi says, what does that mean? Ki adam she'omer, like a person that says, Otot Talmid Chacham. That Talmid Chacham, meaning it's cynical. Like, that rabbi or that kollel student. Otherwise known as saying something cynical. It comes off as if they're not in the most honorable way. Rashi says that it's a lashon bizui. Why? Because he should have said Raboteinu shebamakom, our rabbis. How could we say sometimes, that rabbi, whatever. Well, not rabbi, I take that back. Rabbis love Afka Talmidei Chachamim. But somebody who's a Talmid Chacham. That Talmid Chacham, that kollel student. I'll tell you something that I'm thinking about as I'm speaking to you. I think, Al Pi Halacha, if you're in a grocery store, and I'm not saying 100%, maybe ask your local rabbi, and there's a kollel student in front of you, behind you online, Al Pi Halacha, you're obligated to step aside and let him go first. Because it's not a kollel student standing behind you. It's the Sefer Torah that's standing behind you. It's all the Torah that he learns every day that's standing behind you. And that's not respect. And you have an obligation, literally. If somebody has a son-in-law that sits in kollel and learns all day seriously, and maybe he supports him a little bit, helps him out a little bit, he should know his son-in-law doesn't have to be respecting him because he gives him a few $1,000s a month. He has to be respecting his son-in-law because his son-in-law is Talmid Chacham. And that's not an exaggeration, that's literal. Sometimes when we support our son-in-laws, we feel, they're on our tab, so they owe us. No, they don't owe us anything. Just the opposite. We owe them. They're Talmidei Chachamim. I'm like hesitant to say what I really want to say. So I'm going to say it gently. There's a Gemara in Rosh Hashanah Yud Zayin Amud Aleph. The Gemara over there talks about Poshei Yisrael and Poshei Umot HaOlam, that they go to Gehenom Bar Minan, but even them is only 12 months. And I'm watering this down because, I don't like saying things that sound too harsh because not always everybody's able to deal with it. But, in Apikoris, the Gemara says over there, and for example, Yerovam ben Nevat and his friends, they, even 12 months, doesn't help them. They go to Gehenom forever. And Rashi says, what's an apikoris? Mivazei Talmidei Chachamim. Somebody who disrespects the Talmid Chacham. And we saw that the criteria of Rabbeinu Yonah being Mivazei Talmidei Chachamim is not they have to get to the point of saying something bad to a Talmid Chacham or about a Talmid Chacham. It's even just not behaving in a respectful way near a Talmid Chacham. And on that, the Gemara Rosh Hashanah Yud Zayin Amud Aleph, look it up inside, says, Gehenom kalav einam kalim ba'menan. There's no worse thing in the world you could do than that. That's worse than murder, worse than any sin in the world. That's the number one sin that could be in the whole world. So Rabotai, I'm talking to you like a friend, only like a friend, because I also have to do tshuva in this union. We all should do it together tonight still. I mean that literally. Most of you are going to hear this in the morning. So today still. If you have even a drop of seichel left, the first thing we have to work on before all the beautiful things that we try so hard, before anything in the world, is kvod Talmidei Chachamim, the honor of a Talmid Chacham. The Stipler says, who's a Talmid Chacham? Somebody who spends the majority of his time of the day learning. And Stipler has a bigger chidush, the Pizmanenu, that people aren't so learned. Anybody who you could ask him in any place, he knows Shas, Bekitza, is considered Al Pi Halacha Talmid Chacham. What a pachad, how scary it is that we don't think a million times before you even utter a word near a Talmid Chacham. How much kavod we have to have for each and every Talmid Chacham. And if you're not 100% sure, then stay away from it. Meaning, be careful. You're playing with fire. The Gemara says in Masechet Shabbat Daf Yutet Amud Bet, thank you to Reuven Karellenstein on the speech that is also part of its quoted in the Sefer Yechiyu Ben for bringing this out. The Gemara says over there in Shabbat Kuf Yutet Amud Bet, Kolam Vazet Talmidei Chachamim, somebody bears Talmid Chacham, Ein lo refuah lamakato. There's no way to heal him. Even cancer, many of them today, Baruch Hashem, we could heal already, and nobody should ever know. Almost every illness we could heal. But in Bevazet Talmidei Chachamim, you said something bad about the Talmid Chacham, you embarrassed the Talmid Chacham, Kavachoma, if you mutzi shema, Lashon hara. Ein refuah lemakato. There's nothing to do. It's a lost cause. You ruined yourself. And the Gemara over there brings a pasuk in Divrei Yamim Bet, Lamed Vav Tet Zayin, that shows that this is the thing that Hashem's most makpid on. Hotai, here we were saying, it's not a joke. The honor of Talmidei Chachamim that we have to have, there's no beginning, no end in the world to. There's to an extreme. And if God forbid there was a bizui Talmid Chacham, it has to be corrected and rectified 1,000,000 times over. And there are many stories, we will quote one or two famous ones, that even generations later, HaKadosh Baruch Hu demands that the kavod of a Talmid Chacham should be corrected. The Ma'ari ben Lev, he was the Gdol Ador in the time of the Maran Bet Yosef, one of the Gdolei Ador. And he was a close friend of the Maran Bet Yosef. So there's an old story about the Ma'ari ben Lev that once there was a din Torah by him and his Bet Din, two people came, and the Ma'ari ben Lev said, was posek halacha in the favor of one of the two, obviously, because that's the way every din Torah ends, unless it's a compromise. No, the other guy was a bully, a gangster. He didn't like the fact that it didn't go his way. So he went and he hid by a perfume store that was right near the Beit Din of the Ma'ari ben Lev. And when the Ma'ari ben Lev came out later on in the day to walk home, he came out of the perfume store and he slapped the Ma'ari ben Lev across the face and told him, well, who do you think you are to be posek halacha against me? And there were people on the streets and nobody said anything. And why did they say anything? Because this guy was a gangster and they were scared of him. Oy, Ravotai, listen to what happened. Unbelievable. Pachat Pchadim. In the perfume store, perfumes are a very flammable thing. There's a lot of alcohol content in them. The owner of the perfume store was night and he had to look for something. He lit a candle they didn't have lights back then, right? He took a candle to look for something in the store. The candle dropped. Immediately the whole store went on fire. And the fire spread in the whole town. By Minan, just that day alone, 200 people died. 200 people died just that day alone. And it literally burnt the town down. Historically, it's brought down 5,000 homes burnt. And ad kedei kach, that one day, there was a plague that came out as a result of this fire because, right, the sanitary conditions were terrible afterwards. And in one day alone, 314 people, the Gematria of Shin Daled Yud, Hashem's name, died from this Magifa. Until after that day, that 314 people died, the Magifa stopped, and finally the tragedies stopped happening. But where did this fire start? In the place that this lowlife hid in order to be mevazeh, the Ma'ari ben Lev. Pachat Pchadim, scary, frightening. Look how Hashem takes vengeance for the honor of a Talmid Chacham. But the story doesn't end. This story of Reuven Karelstein brings down. One of the great-great-grandchildren of this Rasha was a great rabbi, a big tzaddik. His name was Rabbi Mordechai Ushminer. Rabbi Mordechai was a Gaon Olam, known in Lithuania as Bar Moifet and Bar Ruach HaKodesh. One night, he was sleeping, and the Ma'ari ben Lev came to him in a dream. And he told him, you should know that you're a great-grandchild of that Rasha that slapped me, and you have to do a tikkun for the neshama of that Rasha. And Mordechai said, what am I supposed to do? How should I do it? I want to do it. What should I do? He said, go to the city called Antipol and go to the house of the local rabbi and buy my sefer and study it well and know all my Torah that I taught, and that will be a tikkun for his neshama. This incident happened over 300 years after the Ma'ari ben Lev story happened. And still, the neshama didn't get a tikkun for what he did. Ad kedei kach is the chumrah of bizui Talmidei Chachamim. Abotai, in order to be able to steer clear of this situation and not fall into a trap, we got to go to the opposite extreme. And the way to go to the opposite extreme, and that'll also rectify if we ever fell into the trap of bizui Talmidei Chachamim, is to do anything and everything in the world in our power to be marbeh the kavod of Talmidei Chachamim, to spread the honor of the Talmidei Chachamim. When we talk about a college student, we should talk about him the hod v'adah, with the most glory in the world. When we discuss Anybody who sits and learns, it should be done b'chirdat kodesh. These are the tzadikei olam. The world stands on them. The entire world stands on them. Eitz chaimi lamachzikim ba, and even us that have the tree of life because we support the Torah, we should know that we're not supporting them. Ha'aron nosei et nosav. The Aron carries those that carry it, Chazal say. They're the Aron, and then the Torah lays. And they're really carrying us. On an artificial way, Hashem did us a favor that we have money and we're able to support them. But be'etzim, in the real thing, the honor has to go to them. It bothers me, and Baruch Hashem, in our foundations, we merited to do the opposite extreme, that a lot of times college students in need have to go fill out forms to request for money, or breaks in tuition, or whatever it is, or they have to reach out to people to beg for money. It's Hashem has a big, big tana on this. It's not a joke. It should never get to that point. We should run after them to offer them help for whatever they need, not the opposite way. I have acquaintances that I know very well, that whatever they hear that somebody who's still learning is marrying off a child, they don't wait to find out that obviously the guy doesn't have money. They immediately pick up the phone to say Mazel Tov, and they say, whatever you need, we're going to help you out. It's not even a subject. It's not a question at all. And it's not midin the mitzvah v'achnasat kala, which is a huge mitzvah. It's midin kvot tamidei chachamim. This is Talmid Chacham is marrying off a child. He doesn't have to go ask for people to help him out. It has to be the obvious, a no-brainer that automatically this is what we do. And if you respect Torah, then the Torah protects you. If you don't respect Torah, then you lose the schut of the protection of the Torah. Many times people ask, why did this bad thing happen to me? Why did that bad thing happen to me? Why didn't this work out? Why didn't that work out? Avotai. It all comes down to this. It all comes down to this. Because we don't have the right respect for Talmidei Chachamim. And if somebody does have the right respect for Talmidei Chachamim, his life changes. Everything changes for him. Imagine children that grow up in a home and see that their parents don't have respect for Talmidei Chachamim. What type of chinuch are they going to have? They're going to grow up to be animals, beasts, worse than criminals they're going to grow up. Literally, that's not an exaggeration. Because if the greatest thing in the world, the Torah, you don't have respect for, so what's left? Nothing's left. And when you ask somebody if you believe in Hashem means I'm not apikoros. So by default, what's included in that question is, do you have respect for Talmidei Chachamim? I'm going to end off with an unbelievable story. And this story, I know the person involved. There was a guy who was in the middle of trying to get a business deal through. That meant a substantial benefit for him. And, sometimes deals go smoothly, but not always. And the nature of business is there's ups and downs and struggles. And there was a 5-year struggle with this deal to get it done the right way. And up and down and back and forth, and it wasn't working out. But kids, it wasn't working out. And he was thinking one night of even giving up on the whole thing, even though he put a lot of hours in over the course of 5 years to make it happen. The next morning of the night that these thoughts were going through his head, he was in a grocery store. And when he went into the grocery store, he saw a college student. He didn't know he was a college student at the time. He later on found out. That was by the cashier, and he was paying. But I don't know the names and exactly the details, Baruch Hashem, because I never needed. But it seems like there's different things, WIC, and I don't know what the other one's called, different government assistance for people to buy food for children, or for them maybe even, when they don't have the money to do so on their own. So he came to pay, and he was giving these coupons, I think they are. I don't know what, these papers. This is the way it was in New Jersey at the time, at least. Hopefully by now they upgraded the system to something smarter, in order to pay for the milk and for the juice and whatever. The goy by the cashier was getting frustrated. It was taking long, and there was a long line and whatever. And he made a nasty comment to the guy. He was like, you can't do something productive with your life and get a job, or I don't know what he said exactly, the words, but you can't come prepared also. That was like in a very aggressive way. This Talmid Chacham, I later on learned that he was Talmid Chacham. Didn't say anything and said, I'm sorry that it's taking a few more minutes, a few more seconds, whatever. Here's what you need. And the person behind him online saw this happening and said, what? The Talmid Chacham's being embarrassed over a few dollars for milk and juice and whatever. And he walked up to the cashier and he said, you should be embarrassed to yourself that you speak to any customer like that. Definitely not to a person like this, such a dignified person. And then he told the Talmid Chacham, you go take everything, just leave, don't worry about it. And he paid the bill for it. Without the wick and without anything. He just paid it. And that was it. The same day, he was driving into Philadelphia to work, and he gets a phone call from the person that he's trying to buy something off of for 5 years that the guy's willing to sell. Like he's willing to close the deal. 5 years of work, nothing changed. And one morning that he stuck up for the honor of a Talmid Chacham, and also maybe put a few bucks towards it, but that's not the point. The point's not the charity element. He stuck up for the honor of a Talmid Chacham, saved him from somebody continuing to shame him over a trivial thing. Hashem said, you stick up for my Torah, I'm going to give you all the blessings of the Torah. And how do I know that the people in the story? Because the person who was working on the business deal was me. Abotai, respect Talmidei Chachamim. That's the way you'll be matzliach in life. If a Talmid Chacham called you or messaged you, and it takes you more than a minute or two to return his call or to be in touch with him, you should live in shame from it. You should be embarrassed. And if you called the Talmid Chacham and he didn't pick up, you should understand, because he actually has a life, and you need to get a life, simply put. I don't care how busy you are in business. He's learning Torah Elokim Chaim. Why does he have to waste 10 times to call you? Or why does he send you a message on a Monday and not get an answer for 3 weeks or 2 weeks? You're directly causing that he should be mivatel more Torah. You got to be extremely careful with this, Rabotai. Extremely, extremely careful with this. And I promise you, whoever is going to take upon themselves a Kabbalah and Kvot Talmidei Chachamim will see big things in his life. And if you need something specific in your life right now, then you should think about it and say to yourself, I'm going to do something for Kvot Talmidei Chachamim, and in that zchut, this and this should work out. And I'm sure in a few weeks already, I'm going to have many stories to share with people who will call me and share with me all the great things that happened to them in the zchut of Kvod Torah v'Lomdeh. Hashem should watch over all of you, and we should have a Shabbat Shalom Varach, mitoch simcha v'nachat v'chvod Torah v'osher v'osher v'chol tuv. Thank you for listening.